So our speaker today is Holly Bennett, who is the Communications Director at the TheraPsil. Is that right? TheraPsil is a nonprofit patient advocacy organization working to legalize psilocybin therapy for Canadians in medical need. Holly holds a special interest in bioethics and drug policy, and she's worked in the cannabis industry, in marketing and communications, patient education. So she's got a lot of experience in this area. In her current role with TheraPsil, she is dedicated to helping change public perception and policy regarding psilocybin-assisted psychotherapy. So thank you, Holly. Over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Marianne, and thanks everybody for having me here today. I'm going to share my screen if you don't mind. I've got a little PowerPoint, so let me get that up and running. And present mode, and I've got time. Hopefully there'll be time at the end for questions. So if you got any questions, just keep them to the end. All right, so my name is Holly, and we're going to be talking about psilocybin therapy in Canada today. So I'm actually in Riverdale, as we were discussing in kind of the preamble of the meeting here. TheraPsil is actually a Victoria-based organization, so they're on Vancouver Island in the West Coast. But I am a lone person here in Toronto, so it's nice to be with other Toronto folks and be on the same time zone today. And I'm the communications director, so I do all of our public relations, media relations. Looks like somebody just not on mute. And I do our social media and all of our outward facing public education and public advocacy work. I kind of head up. So who or what is TheraPsil? So the title of our name kind of breaks it down. Thera as in therapeutic, and Sil, the P is silent, as in psilocybin. So we're a nonprofit coalition and a patient advocacy group, and we were formed in 2019. So a relatively new organization, but we've done a lot of great work over the past couple of years. We're really focused on compassionate access to psilocybin therapy, and we started our work focusing on individuals who had end-of-life distress or cancer-related anxiety. And now we're expanding our services and our advocacy work to focus on broader mental health treatment options. So for individuals struggling with PTSD, treatment-resistant depression, and physical conditions such as cluster headaches. So we've got a 4-pillar mission. Our first pillar is access, so actually helping people access this type of therapy. And the rest of our pillar is professional training, so training healthcare professionals in how to facilitate this therapy for clients and patients. Public education, so this presentation today is part of our public education work. So really educating the public on what is psilocybin, what is psilocybin-assisted psychotherapy, what is the research behind it. And we also have a research arm. So we're doing some observational research right now on patients that we have helped to see how psilocybin therapy has helped these individuals overcome or deal with anxiety and depression related to terminal cancer or other terminal diagnoses. And I guess this is a good point to do a little bit of a sensitivity warning or a trigger warning for this presentation. I will try to keep it more light, but we are talking about some pretty heavy topics today. So if it is triggering to hear about cancer or end-of-life distress, I will not take it personally if this is not the presentation for you, but I just wanted to give that warning. So our work really started back last year in 2020, when on August 4th, after over 100 days of really intense advocacy work, we helped 4 individuals, all with a terminal cancer diagnosis, apply and receive an exemption to Section 56 of the Canadian Drugs and Substances Act. And what this Section 56 exemption is it basically is a letter from the Minister of Health, who right now is Patty Hajdu. And the letter says you are allowed to use, possess, transport, and destroy X amount of grams of psilocybin mushrooms when used for the purpose of medical psilocybin therapy. So essentially, it kind of decriminalizes these individuals from accessing and using psilocybin mushrooms for a medical purpose. And to give a little bit of history on these Section 56 exemptions, back over 20 years ago, before medical cannabis was legalized in 2001 in Canada, These were the same exemptions used to help medical cannabis patients access cannabis. They're also the same exemptions that are used to help, what's it called? Like harm reduction centers, safe injection sites for intravenous drug use. So Section 56 exemptions are granted for these harm reduction sites as well. So August 4th last year, 4 people got these exemptions, and that was a huge deal because that was the first time since 1974, when psilocybin was first made a controlled substance in Canada, that anybody had received these personal exemptions to use psilocybin in a medical purpose. Since then, we've helped 31 other Canadians all across the country, spanning 6 different provinces, access these exemptions, so 35 patients total. And now, at this particular moment in time, we're really focused on advocating for medical psilocybin regulations. We really, truly believe that these exemptions, while they helped to access for the first 35 people, this is not a sustainable access for healthcare. It would be as if for chemotherapy, for example, you needed to write a letter, get a letter's doctor of support, get a therapist doctor letter of support, and write to the Minister of Health, Patty Hajdu, and get her personal blessing that you could access chemotherapy or another substance, for example. So right now we're focused on ideally regulating this. So it could be accessed in a way similar to medical cannabis or something like medical assistance in dying, where this is a healthcare decision made between you and your physician or your healthcare provider, and not an administrative decision made by, quite frankly, a politician. So all that goes to say, let's start from the basics. So what is psilocybin? It's a compound. It's a compound found in over 144 types of mushrooms, many of which grow on the west coast of Canada. And they can create, when ingested, psychoactive or psychedelic effects. This can include alterations in sensation, cognition, and emotions. And it's important to note that psilocybin mushrooms have been used by Indigenous cultures all throughout the world in religious and healing ceremonies for likely thousands of years. A lot of the anecdotal research about this Indigenous aspect comes from Oaxaca, Mexico. And if you're interested in learning more, you can Google a woman by the name of Maria Sabina, and there's lots of great information about her healing work. So a lot of people are wondering, is there research about this? And yes, there is. So there's tons of great research specifically on end-of-life distress and cancer-related anxiety by organizations such as Johns Hopkins, UCLA, and NYU regarding the use of psilocybin mushrooms, when coupled with psychotherapy. And I'll explain what that process looks like. And it's important to note that the compound psilocybin, which grows naturally in these mushrooms, has been illegal in Canada or made a controlled substance since 1974, so several years. So as I mentioned, we've started a lot of our work with individuals who have a palliative diagnosis and who are experiencing something called end-of-life distress. And end-of-life distress can be categorized as the psychological complex of anxiety, depression, and demoralization that can occur, doesn't always occur, but sometimes occurs when a patient is diagnosed with an incurable illness or who is receiving palliative care. It's really that those emotions and those feelings that come up when somebody has to contemplate their own mortality, their own quality of life as it's changing through a different stage of life. And for many, it really represents this loss of control, and it robs people of optimism or their sense of meaning. So what is psilocybin-assisted therapy? How can mushrooms be used to combat this end-of-life distress? Well, it's important to note that psilocybin-assisted therapy, or we just call psilocybin therapy, it's the professionally guided use of psilocybin in combination with psychotherapy. And it really differs from the recreational use of psychedelics. So what this isn't is, giving people a bunch of mushrooms and telling them, go out into the forest, go out into the field, and hopefully you'll feel better. No, it's actually a really personalized treatment protocol that involves 3 key stages. So the first stage is intent, and it's work. This is therapy. So the first stage is therapy work without any psilocybin. So this is when an individual is building trust with a therapist, talking about what kind of issues and things that are coming up for them as it relates to their diagnosis. Perhaps they're feeling like fear surrounding leaving their family and transitioning into the next life. Perhaps they're feeling senses of guilt or regrets about the way that they spent time on earth. So this is where you really dig into that really hard stuff to get at to with your therapist, and you're building trust. And this is called intention setting. So knowing that you're going to be taking psilocybin mushrooms soon, this is an individual who's going to talk to their therapist about what is my intention for this altered state of consciousness that I'm about to go in. So you can imagine, let's say, before you're about to dream, for example, and this is not a great analogy, but it's as close as I can get. So before you're about to dream, you could start thinking about really scary stuff and stuff that you're really not interested in dreaming about. And that might not be great for a dream, but for when you're talking about psychedelics, these are the things you really want to push through the psychedelic experience. So the next part of this program or model is what's called the medicine session. And you'll see this picture here. So this individual with the eye shades on, his name is Thomas. Somebody there? Oh, no worries. Thomas has been incredibly open about his own personal journey with cancer and with psilocybin therapy. So you'll see Thomas has eye shades on. This is so that all his intention is focused inward. He's not distracted by this gentleman over here or this gentleman over here or the dog or anything he sees. All of his focus is going to be inward. He's also wearing headphones, and these headphones are playing a very curated playlist of music that's helping to guide him through various emotional states throughout his journey. So Thomas took approximately 5 grams of dried psilocybin mushrooms, and that's a lot. That's quite a lot of mushrooms, but this really helps him go into a space where he is fully focused inwards and not distracted by the outside world. So he's able to get into this separate part of his consciousness that would not be accessible otherwise. This individual here is Bruce Tobin. So Dr. Bruce Tobin, he's actually the founder of TheraPsil. He's a clinical psychologist. And this gentleman over here, his name is John. And John is a hospice worker and somebody that Thomas had been building a lot of trust with over his time in palliative care. So this is what the medicine session looks like. The individual takes, 5 grams, give or take, of dried psilocybin mushrooms, sometimes in capsules, sometimes made into a tea, sometimes just straight down the hatch. And a psilocybin medicine journey is about 6 to 8 hours. So it's a long time. And these individuals, Bruce and John, they actually don't do much during this. Thomas is having a whole experience inside of his consciousness. And these guides here, these therapists, are really only there if Thomas says, I'm thirsty, can you get me water? Sure, get them water. I need to go to the bathroom, can you help take me to the bathroom? They're just there for support, but it's really a hands-off model for this particular session. Now, after the psilocybin medicine session, Bruce, who is Thomas's therapist, is going to do what's called integration. So Thomas is going to talk about all of the feelings, the visuals, the emotions that came up during his psilocybin journey. And Bruce is going to help him kind of decode that and figure out how he can integrate those lessons into his daily life for lasting healing. So again, this is very different from the recreational use of psychedelics. There's careful medical oversight. There's a lot of pre-screening that goes into ensuring an individual is right for this type of therapy. And there's a clinically tested treatment protocol. We use the same treatment protocol that was used by Johns Hopkins in their research studies, but just in a community setting. So Thomas he's at his home, he's in his bed, that's his dog. So again, just back to the research, because I know some of this sounds a little bit woo-woo and a little hippy-dippy, and I totally understand that, but it's important to note again that there's real clinical evidence that shows this can really help people. So I'll just read a couple of these research quotes. So psilocybin produced immediate, substantial, and sustained improvements in anxiety and depression, and led to decreases in cancer-related demoralization and hopelessness, improved spiritual well-being, and increased quality of life. And another research study by Griffiths showed that psilocybin produced large and significant decreases in clinician-rated and self-rated measures of depression, anxiety, and mood disturbance, and increases in the measures of quality of life, life meaning, death acceptance, which is huge, especially for individuals who are wrestling with their own mortality, and optimism. And these effects were sustained at 6 months. So this isn't just oh, I felt a little bit better the next day. This is something that when psilocybin is used in this treatment protocol and there's proper integration involved, these effects can really last for an individual. So who and how do we help people? Like I said, we help people apply at this point in time for these special exemptions granted by the Minister of Health. We've got, this is just our basic patient inclusion criteria, but our clinical team has a whole, host of checklists of what makes somebody a good or a not good candidate for this type of therapy. But right now, we only help people who are 19 plus and who are a resident of Canada. We do have a narrow protocol in terms of we're only at this point in time, just strictly due to our bandwidth, helping people with a diagnosis of a terminal or a life-threatening illness, those who are in palliative care, or those who are in remission from cancer. So some of the individuals we've helped, they've been in remission from cancer for 15 years, for example, but there's this constant underlying feeling that, what if the cancer returns? What if every time I go for a test, they're going to say I have cancer again? And that anxiety is really ruining these people's lives. And we also recently helped an individual, the first individual in Canada with ALS, get access to psilocybin therapy through these exemptions. So once people get these exemptions, we then connect them to therapists who we've personally trained through our training program, who can facilitate this therapy for them. And this woman here, again, another lovely person who's been super open about her journey with cancer. She's Lori Brooks. She's from Abbotsford, BC. And if you just Google her name, you can find a lot of information about her as well. And I'm going to play this little video. So this is of Thomas, and this was taken the day after his psilocybin journey. It's a 60-second clip, and I'm hoping he can describe how this journey has changed his perspective on his diagnosis better than I can. So hopefully this works.
I know the cancer's still there, but doesn't feel as helpless. I know that there isn't necessarily things that I can do about it, but it doesn't feel like as much of a helpless, hopeless thing. Having cancer feels like being dragged behind a horse. It's out of your control. Maybe this would be a little closer to riding the horse, as opposed to being dragged by it. We're still on the horse. We're still going places, but it's not as out of control.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that, and there's plenty of videos on our YouTube channel of Thomas and Lori and other individuals sharing their story. This is just a really short clip that hopefully helps kind of crystallize what this can do for people. So again, I mentioned, I'm just going to check the time, make sure I'm not running over. Okay, we're good. I mentioned earlier that, yes, we help people with these Section 56 exemptions, but right now we are also currently advocating for medical regulations. That's our current campaign, because there's a few problems with Section 56 exemptions. First off, no healthcare should be administered by case-by-case exemptions granted by the highest levels of our government. Quite frankly, the Minister of Health, Patty Hajdu herself. That's not a sustainable way to offer healthcare. And it's also arbitrary and discriminatory. There are folks who have been waiting over 5 months for a response to their exemption applications, who meet all of the criteria that another individual who just 2 months ago got their exemption for. So it's very unclear what the Minister of Health and what the Health Canada is saying. This person deserves access, this person doesn't. We're not going to deny this person, but we're just never going to respond to them. So it's really arbitrary. It's a really discriminatory way to offer healthcare. And furthermore, it doesn't actually provide access to the medicine or psilocybin mushrooms themselves. The way that these exemptions work is it says you can't go to jail if you use mushrooms for a medical purpose over, most patients' exemptions have a 5-gram limit, but it doesn't help patients actually access psilocybin mushrooms in a regulated way. So Thomas, for example, he had to grow his mushrooms himself, which in itself was a very therapeutic experience for Thomas, but it took a few weeks. And other individuals who are just not interested in growing their own mushrooms, they need to go to the illicit market to find their medicine. And again, no healthcare should be accessed that way. It would be as if, again, you had to access your chemotherapy drugs on the illicit market. It just doesn't make sense. So what is the solution to this? Regulation. So we really want to legalize medical psilocybin and psilocybin therapy in Canada. And I'm not talking about recreational use. I'm not talking about the way that cannabis currently is in Canada. I'm talking about what cannabis used to be like, 2016, before the recreational legislation. So this is, again, something that we're looking for. A patient could go to their physician or their healthcare provider, talk about this with them and say, is this the right decision for me? Let's talk about the pros and cons. And then the doctor could decide to then prescribe psilocybin or psilocybin therapy for their patient, somebody who they know their health history about and who they've built a relationship with. And then a patient would then be able to access their medicine, their psilocybin mushrooms, from a regulated source, a licensed producer, something that's GMP certified, something where you know exactly how that mushroom was grown, what is the strain of that mushroom, what is the amount of psilocybin and psilocin in the mushroom. And so it would actually be very similar to medical cannabis. The only difference is there should need to be some regulations around how the therapy is administered as well. It would be great if this was a therapy that could be administered by regulated therapists and healthcare professionals who are really, really trained in this unique modality. This is a therapeutic modality that you do need to be trained in. It's not something that we just think, every therapist would be great at doing. It's very different to help guide somebody in this way when they're in a non-ordinary state of consciousness, and then help them decode their experience and integrate that into their life. So just last week, we actually submitted draft regulations to Health Canada and Minister Hajdu. They're based on the 2016 Access to Medical Cannabis, ACMPR, the Access Cannabis for Medical Purposes regulations. And they're just a draft. We're not saying we're the experts in this, but we're trying to nudge the government along and say, look, you already have access for cannabis. It wouldn't be that difficult to tweak it for psilocybin, and to ensure that this can become a safe, accessible, and equitable treatment option in Canada. So again, we believe this should be something between a patient and their doctor, and not between a patient and the government. You may be thinking as well, what does the general public think about this? Are Canadians generally accepting of psilocybin therapy? And so we did a study. We've actually done 3 public perception polls over the past year. This is our most recent one from June. I'll admit the sample size wasn't huge, but it was, what we had access to. So we worked with a company called YouGov, and they did an online poll of 1,016 adults representing all demographics and regions of Canada. And we asked individuals 2 questions. So the first question was just point blank, do you agree that psilocybin should be legalized for medical purposes when a patient has their physician support? 54% of Canadians sampled said yes, and obviously that's a majority. Not a huge majority, but it is a majority. When we asked people a second question and let them know that there is research about this, clinically proven research, and there's actually 35 Canadians who already have access to this in Canada through exemptions. What do you think about this now? Do you think psilocybin should be medically legalized? That rose to 66%, which is very encouraging for us. It's very encouraging for the patients we support. And it also shows that education is really, really key to acceptance of these more kind of controversial issues. So that's why I love doing presentations like this, to kind of open people's minds and just see what kind of questions folks have about this and where there might be misconceptions. So again, just to kind of recap, what does success look like for us? Regulations, not exemptions. We continue to do exemptions because people need access now. They cannot wait for regulations, But so we're doing a 2-track model. We're helping people still get these exemptions, but we're pushing for regulations. Again, we're looking at a doctor as gatekeeper model. So a doctor can prescribe medical psilocybin or psilocybin therapy. Patients should be able to access professionally produced and tested psilocybin. But we also believe it's important for patients to be able to grow their own. If that's something that they're interested in, they should be able to grow their own medicine. Like I said, for Thomas, it was incredibly therapeutic to know this is something that he grew from a spore and then ingested and it helped him change his life. That is important for some individuals. We also believe that therapists and doctors should be able to access psilocybin for professionally training purposes. This is a bit more of a controversial one, but we truly believe that a therapist or doctor who's guiding somebody through this journey can't possibly know what it's like and be best equipped to help their patients if they haven't had their own psilocybin journey themselves. So Minister Haidu has actually granted 19 healthcare professionals associated with TheraPsil their own exemptions for this purpose, to take psilocybin mushrooms to guide each other on these therapeutic journeys so that they really, really know what it's like. And so when a patient says, oh, I saw this during my journey, or I felt like this, the therapist can say, I know what you're talking about. I've been in that altered state of consciousness myself. And it really helps build trust and understanding between the therapist and the patient. So what's next for us? Like I said, regulations. But if somebody such as yourself or somebody you know could benefit from psilocybin therapy, please get in touch. Like I said, we're still helping folks with exemptions and we'd love to hear from you. You can visit our website to learn more about our current campaign. And we also encourage you to write your MP to express support. My MP is Julie DeBruzen. I've actually had a couple conversations with her about this. And you can also follow us on social media at TheraPsil. And I'd love to take any questions or comments.
Yeah, okay, this is Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Where else other than Canada is this therapy in existence? I think the USA as well, of course, but anybody else, any other countries?
Yeah.
And which are the provinces in Canada that's utilizing some of the people right now?
Great question. So I'll start with the first part of your question, other countries. So in the States, several states have decriminalized psilocybin and other psychedelics. Oregon is actually probably closest to the model that we're looking to do. Oregon just legalized psilocybin therapy. They're doing it in a slightly different way where you would go to a particular center, you would be administered the psilocybin at that center, but you wouldn't need to prove a medical condition. It can be for purely therapeutic purposes. We're looking at slightly more of a medical model where you do need to, discuss this with your doctor, have some sort of diagnosis to move forward with this. In Jamaica, there are many, it's decriminalized in Jamaica, so there are many retreats that happen there. And other psychedelics are used worldwide, for example, Peru. I'm trying to think, but I would say for our purposes, yeah, the States is the best example of places where this is currently going on in Oregon. Oh, and so the second part of your question, we have helped patients in 6 different provinces get access to this. That's not because other people don't need access in other provinces. It's just, we've never been contacted by somebody from the Yukon, for example. So we haven't been able to help somebody from the Yukon. We're looking at federal legislation for this. I'm sure there will be some parts of the legislation, if it passes, that will be province dependent. But we are looking at this like a federal healthcare regulation.
Which provinces are they in?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So BC, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Ontario, Quebec, and Newfoundland.
Holly, I have a question about the constitutionality of the provisions. I've got some experience in this area. And I'm wondering, have you ever run a test case on the lack of a legal supply in the cumbersome Section 56? Section 56 of the CDSA didn't solve the problem in Parker, and the Court of Appeals said that wasn't a proper medical response to the need. Have you guys ever tried to build up a charter case?
Great question. So Last year, before these exemptions were approved, we were honestly this close to going to federal court. We were geared up, we had our lawyers on board, and we said, if these exemptions aren't approved, these patients will go to federal court for their right to access psilocybin based on Charter 7, Section 7 of the Charter. Right now, we're in a similar position. Some patients have been waiting, like I said, over 5 months for their exemptions, and for no particular reason.
So why not just do it? What's the downside?
We don't want to go to court. We believe that we can do this through advocacy.
You're wrong.
Okay. I appreciate that.
No, I mean, you're wrong, because the federal government has to be dragged by the hair to do anything. And the only reason why the medical pot regime came into effect was because the Court of Appeal ordered them to do it. And, you know, you've got MPs like Nathaniel Erskine Smith, who are very, very loud in their support for decriminalizing of all drugs. But it's just not going to happen. And so what you need is a great set of facts, a criminal prosecution rather than an application in advance. But absent that, if you don't fight, you're not going to get it. Asking isn't going to happen.
Absolutely. And so we definitely understand that. We have lawyers on side ready to go to court, and it's really the patient's decision. So we're waiting on the patients to say, I've had enough. I can't go to court on behalf of an individual. It needs to be that patient. So,
and you've got end of life scenarios here for people, which definitely drives up the the Section 7 characterization of all of this.
So
and what about lawful supply? There is no lawful supply.
Yeah, as an argument for this.
Yeah, I mean, you got no lawful supply. So, where are patients whose doctors have made the opinion that this is in the nature of life-saving treatment because people are suicidally, concerned about end-of-life issues or PTSD, higher risk of self-harm, of course.
Yeah, I know that's a huge other argument. We've actually, I haven't submitted. One of the lawyers that we've retained has submitted a mandamus application for one of the patients who have been waiting 5 months.
Right. Okay.
Based on the decision of that mandamus application, that will determine whether that individual is going to court or not.
But the mandamus is in a federal court anyway, right?
Yes, it is.
So, okay.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity,
we're looking at it from all angles. I can send you a couple links if you'd like to Paul Lewin. You might be familiar.
Yeah, I know Paul well. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So Paul's our lawyer. He's our lawyer for constitutional. And we're also working with Hamid Law in regards to the mandamus.
Okay. Well, good luck with that. I'll watch the news.
Thank you.
I think we have time for maybe a couple more questions.
I have a question.
I know Benito has his hand up.
Interesting topic. It really is amazing to see how these type of conversations are occurring here in Canada. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's a complex question.
Okay.
Comparing with Mexico and comparing with cannabis, now Canada is in a recreational stage where we can take cannabis and go to the corner and buy it. And that feels good because it's something that removes a lot of stigma over there.
Mm-hmm.
Mexico, in this moment, they are just thinking to move it to like a medicine. They just approve it as a medicine. Is the same stage that we are having here with this chemical that Canada is trying for medical, but in the future will be more like recreational when we see the economical impact that this can bring?
Potentially, honestly, I'm not too familiar with Mexico's laws, but I get what your question is are you asking, are we looking to potentially legalize this for recreational purposes as well?
Yeah, when we discover that it's like economical background there.
It's possible that could happen. But right now, we're really focused on the medical aspect. And with the recreational aspect, I actually don't think psilocybin is as lucrative as cannabis, because this is not something that you take every day or every week or even every month. If you talk to a lot of people who take psychedelics recreationally, it's maybe like 2 to 3 times a year. So if you're looking at, getting, 4 grams of mushrooms, let's say it's $10 a gram, that's $40 4 times a year. That's not very lucrative. So it's possible this could become a recreational thing. But right now, as I said, we're super focused on the medical aspect just because of the amount of research and, quite frankly, the compassionate need for it as a treatment option for individuals when all other treatment options haven't worked.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
I have another quick question. Is that I've heard that it's a really great, really good for PTSD patients and people who suffer from that. I mean, is that something that that TheraPsil has looked at?
Absolutely, yeah. So we've submitted a couple applications for folks with PTSD. None of them have been approved yet. And last night we actually did a webinar with 3 veterans who have, illegally used psilocybin, and it's completely transformed their life. They were severely suffering with PTSD and other war-related traumas. And so we are definitely looking at that. At this point, it's such a sticky situation because we don't know what the minister why the minister is saying yes to person A, no to person B. Again, it's an infringement on Section 7 rights and potentially Section 15 rights, where it says everybody's equal under the law, regardless of your disability or your mental health or physical disability. So, we're looking into that, absolutely, because we think this is massive for those individuals who other treatment options just haven't worked.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to call on Mike Lowler to thank our speaker.
Yeah, thanks for everything, Holly. You're a fairly young organization, aren't you? I think it was 1994. It was approved, and then you began as an organization just a couple of years ago. Is that right?
So in '74, psilocybin was created. It was made a controlled substance in Canada. We, as an organization, were formed in 2019, so just 2 years ago.
Okay. Do you have? Okay, I'm asking questions, but I can't resist. Do you have MPs that are championing this course?
Yeah, we have a few. So I'm not sure. Aaron mentioned Nathaniel Erskine-Smith. He's very supportive of the work we do. Hetty Fry is supportive. Marcus Pulowski, Alistair McGregor. So we do work with MPs, and hopefully more will be willing to publicly support our mission.
Okay, so you're really.
Can I ask a question now?
Sorry.
Can I ask a question?
Mike was in the middle of, I thought, thanking our speaker, but I'll give you a quick second. I know that John Ryle has something that he wants to present as well. Mike, are you finished with your thank you?
No, I was going to let Guru.
Okay. Okay, Guru. Go ahead, Guru.
Him being a doctor,
Hi.
so.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Guru. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
It's a lot of material to digest. I'm more interested from point of being a physician. So what are the top 2 indications for this therapy? What is
Yeah, based on the research right now, it's end-of-life distress and cancer-related anxiety. But there's a lot of research also coming out about treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, and substance use disorders.
Now, so old age is associated with a lot of anxieties, especially you have more than one symptom. Today you're nauseated, another day you can't hear, and hearing loss is the worst, and I'm suffering from that. I'm 87 years. Loss of hearing is progressive, and I'm come to the point that I can't socially participate,
Right.
Even to talk to my wife, I have many words and not audible. So there is, of course, a depression associated with it. I try to keep more sane by reading, walking. Not everybody has that gumption. So is that going to help you for that?
I can't say for sure. I would not want to give sort of false hope to say it would, but what we do know is folks who are dealing with those same sort of feelings, but because they have a specific diagnosis, it has helped for them. So general depression or anxiety related to aging and aging related factors, it could help. I can't say yes for sure because there's no research on that.
We can come to you.
You can contact us for sure, and talk with our clinical team.
Okay. Now your website is, Karen probably knows your website.
Yeah, it's TheraPsil.ca, and I can pass along some resources to Leslie or to Marion to pass along to the group if they'd like.
I'd be happy to, if you can forward to me. I think you have my email.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, and I can forward it to Guru and anybody else.
Perfect.
Very interesting talk.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Guru.
Mike, you have a concluding remarks? Mike Lawler?
Yeah. Okay. So thanks a lot for a great presentation, Holly, and you gave us lots of information. And you're really starting on a new road, and we hope you all the best. And thank you so much for coming here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks everybody for your open hearts and minds to learn about this topic. And yeah, if you have any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. So I will talk to you later.
John, do you do you have a presentation that you wanted to?
I do have a presentation. Just very quickly, it reminded me during the conversation that we had many of these same discussions over treatment and work on AIDS over the years. And so once again, I'm asking for club member support for the Rotary AIDS Walk, the video walk. If you go on the Toronto.Rotary AIDS Walk website, we've got a goal of $1,500. So far, we've raised $6,000, but that's only from 2 members. So anything you can give towards support of working on AIDS and the treatment of AIDS, your help will be most appreciated. So Toronto East Jokers is the team to support. Thank you.
That's $6 or $600?
$600.
Oh, that's like
Did I say $6?
Well, you just said 6, and I wasn't sure if it meant $6.
No, I wouldn't be here at 6. Okay,
John,
600.
If you want anything you wanted to share your screen, you mentioned that before, feel free.
No, that's okay. I was just going to give the website, but it's toronto.rotaryaidswalk.ca.
Okay, you may want to use the Club Runner email to send out a reminder to the members if you wish.
All right.
Okay, any other comments before we say goodbye? Anybody have any announcements or? No? Well, okay, but we're going to have a very good week. And next week, we have a presentation from the National Wildlife Center. We have a guest speaker from there. So we look forward to seeing you back next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.